Did you know having fevers is good for you? Surprised? So am I. But the two doctors on the Huberman podcast explain how this and other tips to build and strengthen your immune system. And I'm here to condense that 3.5-hour podcast into 25 minutes into actual items that you and I can take right now. And the best part is you don't have to buy anything. So let's get to the slideshow I made and take our health to the next level. The podcast is between Andrew Huberman and Dr. Robert Seheult. And in this, they talk about making your immune system stronger. And they go over three main things. They go over fever, they go over sunlight, and they go over forest bathing. Before we go into it, we got to really know who the heck Dr. Seheult is. This guy does not mess around. He's a practicing medical doctor. Funny enough, he's about 2 hours east of LA, so he's in my backyard. He's quadruple board certified, which is crazy. He's in critical care, internal medicine, sleep medicine, and pulmonary care, which is care of your respiratory system. And he still has a family and he has kids. Oh, he's really knocking it out. The beginning, they talk about the truth about fevers. Fever is an immune system booster. The high body temperature creates more white blood cells. And if you know from your health class back in 7th grade, more white blood cells fights infections faster. And here's the catch what they talk about. Taking fever-reducing medication too soon can actually prolong sickness by interfering with your body's natural defenses. And the best part is you can emulate a fever type of environment to boost your immune system, and that's what they focus on. You can artificially do this by using saunas and hot baths to mimic fevers. And maybe that's why after being sick for a couple of days or we have a hard day at work, we go and take a hot shower, you feel so much better because you're giving your immune system a jump start. And here's one major bonus tip. We already know that regular heat builds up your immune system because it activates the white blood cells, but contrast therapy takes it to the next level. It makes the white blood cells more active. So in other words, you go and take a hot shower, your body's saying, okay, this is like a fever type of environment. Your body produces more white blood cells, but they're just sitting around because there's nothing to attack because it's an artificial environment. But when you jump into cold water or take a cold bath, it creates a type of shock therapy to your body and gets the white blood cells activated. So what these two doctors are saying is this is a way to build a strong immune system. If you don't have a sauna, you don't have access to a steam room, there's ways to mimic. Like what I said earlier, you take a hot bath to mimic the fever environment, then you take a cold shower and you can go back and forth. Or you could take it to the next level. You get some wet hot towels, you throw it in the microwave, you put that on yourself to mimic a sauna, then you take a cold shower or a bath afterwards, and then you go back and forth. And during this time, you're building your immune system to be stronger. Later in the conversation, Dr. Robert Seheult talks about the New Start framework, NEWSTART, where each letter represents a task that you could do for free to build your immune system. But rather than me going detail, let's hear it from the doctor.
What do you think of as the fundamental layer of keeping a healthy immune system to avoid getting sick? And then we'll talk about how to get over and move through being sick more quickly.
Yes. Well, the question is, how do you avoid getting sick in terms of infectious diseases? And as it turns out, the answer to that is actually the same in terms of avoiding getting sick for anything. And it sort of goes to the pillars, as you call it, in my mind. There's actually a physician that I know very well, just outside of Stanford, actually, in a place called Weimar University, Dr. Neil Nedley, and he's actually coined this mnemonic called New Start. And each of those letters, to me, in my mind, is something that I go to when I want to improve health in people in general. So the N starts for nutrition. And we can talk about nutrition and what that does to the human body. Obviously, as natural as possible, staying away from processed foods. That's something there. Exercise is E. And When I'm talking about exercise, I'm talking about the understanding that we have regarding exercise, not to build muscle, necessarily to be stronger. I'm talking about exercise in terms of health, and that has more of a J hook type of picture. What I mean by J hook is if you're not doing any exercise, you're going to have higher levels of inflammation. As soon as you start to do some exercise, even mild to moderate exercise, the amount of inflammation in your body starts to come down. But as you start to do more and more exercise, you do have to be careful in terms of your general health. This is exactly what happens with athletes. They have to be very careful that when they're doing that type of elite athletic exercise, that they're not sick on the day of performance. And so that's an issue. So I'm referring to just, mild to moderate exercise is good. The next one would be W, water. So this is something that's really interesting. Obviously, it seems pretty, obvious, but not only the use of internal water, but external water. So in that area, we can talk about sauna, cold plunge, things of that nature that can actually help with our immune system. That's a whole interesting area of discussion. It involves the innate immune system. It involves interferon. There's a lot of history and data that goes back over 100 years on how that's been used. START, S-T-A-R-T. So S is sunlight. I've been a real proponent of getting people outside into the sun. And we can talk a lot about that. There's a lot of interesting research, not only in terms of sunlight, in terms of influenza, but also COVID, and just about any natural disease. A lot of interesting information there. T stands for the old term called temperance, which you may recall is a term that we use to prevent us from taking in toxins into our body. That's a whole nother discussion. So staying away from things that would make you sick. A is air. And when I talk about air, it's not just what we focus on, which is keeping bad things out of the air, so having fresh air. But there's a whole discussion to be had in terms of air that has good qualities in it. So there's a whole area of research that looks at, for instance, phytoncides, which are chemicals that come off of trees. You may have heard of forest bathing. They've done a lot of research in Japan on this. And getting out into nature, there are actual chemicals that are in the air that you can breathe that actually have an impact on your innate immune system. Finally, R, and we'll get into R and T at the end. R is rest. Now, this goes without saying, but people who have good sleep habits are going to have much better immune systems. Whether you're talking about the antibody response after a vaccine versus just the number of times per year you're sick, there's very good data, very good research that shows that getting 7-8 hours of sleep a night is going to be very beneficial for your immune system. It has to do with cortisol and beta receptors and all sorts of things. And the last T, which is trust. And for some, it is trust in a higher power, trust in God. These are the sorts of things that can help us relieve stress. If someone else is helping you, if someone else is there. T would also include community, people that are around you. These are some of the less tangible ways of measuring it. But when someone asks me a question, what can I do to avoid getting sick? And as you just asked me in terms of influenza, there's a lot of specific things we can talk about, but that's where I start out with the pillars of health.
So let me summarize real quickly about what he was talking about. N in New Start is nutrition. He emphasized to eat whole, unprocessed food to give fuel to your immune system. That's why you're seeing a new interest in organ meats like liver becoming popular, since it's more nutrient dense than your green energy drinks. And also cut back on the processed foods, cut back on the sugar and seed oils. They all are tied into chronic diseases. And this is what you need to do to take your nutrition to the next level, which is going to build your immune system. The next letter is E for exercise. Moderate workouts reduce inflammation. Overtraining does suppress your immune system. So you're a very active athlete. You got to be extra careful where you don't get sick while you're training. For us regular Joes, the version of moderate workouts is building up a sweat, maybe getting a little bit out of breath, getting the heart rate up. And if you're not even at that level, just going out and doing a 15-minute walk or a 30-minute walk every day is the right step. And the first step where then you could advance yourself. I know in the beginning it can't be tough, but I'm telling you, I lost 20 pounds in 6 months, and it's night and day. You feel better, you have more energy, you're happier, less issues with depression. It's a step that everybody needs to take. W is for water. Now, we all know you have to keep hydrated, but exposure to cold water and saunas improves immune resilience. And we talked about that with contrast therapy. going from a hot sauna or a hot shower and then going to a cold ice pool, and then the back and forth builds up your immune system. So that's W for water. Next is S for sunlight. And you're going to notice throughout this whole video, and if you take the time to listen to the 3.5-hour podcast, they talk about sunlight a lot. And you're hearing it nowadays too, how the sun's good for you. It's more than just vitamin D. What they talk about is infrared, and it charges the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the cell within the cell. It is the life force. We would not exist without mitochondria. Mitochondria generates ATP, which is your body's energy. And what the sunlight does is when it shines on the body, it gets them going, it activates them, it makes them work faster. And when they work faster, they produce more antioxidants, which we will talk about more later. The next letter is T for temperance. Avoid toxins like excess alcohol, cigarettes, or all form of drugs. A is for air. Fresh air and phytocyanides, which are natural chemicals coming from trees, where study shows it helps build your immune system. This is what we call forest bathing. For us city dwellers who are stuck in the city or even the suburbs, you're not really getting out a lot. You have to take the time and drive out for 20 minutes or I guess for us LA people, maybe an hour to go in a forest. And it's just more than just forest bathing and getting the natural chemicals. It's about not getting access to your phone because it doesn't have any signal. It's about being present. It's about walking on the nature trail. It's getting, yes, of course, the fresh chemicals, the phytocyanides to build your immune system. But more importantly, you're getting exposed to different microorganisms that helps build your microbiome, which results in building up your immune system. And R is for rest. Poor sleep increases your chance of getting sick by 4 times. So get your 7 to 8 hours per day. T is for trust. Social connection, which includes spirituality and stress management, physically strengthens immunity. Whether you go to your church, your mosque, your temple, your synagogue, you have sort of a social network over there that if you're sick, you can call somebody, they come help you versus somebody who's by themselves. Now, if you're not religious, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure you have good social connection. You have a strong relationship with your family. If the family's your issue, you build up a social circle with your friends. And it's such a bad issue. Places like Canada and UK has this so-called Department of Loneliness where it's an epidemic. And it's definitely an epidemic in the US. Now, women, they naturally are more social, so they have a good network. The issue are us guys. We always say everything's okay. Don't bother me. I'm fine. And it's not fine. We tend to have this issue, and we tend to be stubborn about it. So what I'm telling you, because I'm working on myself on this, is take the extra step. Reach out. If you have to rebuild your social network, do it. I'm telling you, in the long run, it's going to be helpful for you because when you're sick, you need some help, you got nobody to call, your stress levels are going to be much higher than somebody that does have that social network. So I'm telling you, I'm going through it, I'm repairing it, I'm rebuilding it. I know that it's easy to say no, guys, but take that step. Please take that step and build up that social network. I'll get off my soapbox, but that's something that's a little bit personal to me. So that's the New Start framework. And later in the conversation, they really get into sunlight. And sunlight is the best infrared source out there. It's out there, it's free, it's much better than those $1,000 LED infrared lights you could get. And if you have to go down the route, go for it. But it's right there. I see it, it's free. And when you look at the sun, the red hue, that's the infrared. And it supports the mitochondria to help clean up oxidative stress. And oxidative stress happens when there is an imbalance between free radicals and antioxidants. And also, they don't talk about this, but when one of the cells gets oxidized, it starts a domino effect where other cells starts getting infected, and it repeats itself. And it's one of the main reasons why we have issues with chronic disease, and another reason why we age faster. It's all about your body's imbalance. They don't have enough antioxidants to fight off oxidative stress. But with sunlight, it speeds up the mitochondria. They becomes more active. When they get more active, they create the antioxidants to fight over the oxidative stress. And Dr. Seheult talks about a case study with 30,000 Swedish women. And at the end, the conclusion was women who got the most sunlight had lower mortality. Even smokers who got sun live as long as non-smokers who avoided it. So this is why they constantly talk about sunlight in this podcast. And the next big thing is cloudy days like today. Cloudy days are fine, folks. As long as you see sunlight out there, you're going to get the infrared benefits. And the good thing is infrared goes through clothing. So wear something that's like long sleeve, light, maybe a hat. That's going to block out the UV rays. The infrared can go through the clothing and reach about 3 inches into the body. So all of a sudden, your blood vessels, your organs are benefiting from the infrared. And if you can, try to get out there every day. Try to get 15 to 20 minutes. Do a morning walk. If you're busy at work, try to take time out of your lunch. Go out there. But infrared is understated in the community right now. But I guarantee you in the next 5 years, you can hear more about it. They talk more about sleep. Poor sleep is 5 times higher risk of getting sick. We talked about earlier in this video, so get your 7 to 8 hours. But one big key thing is melatonin is just not for sleep. It's an antioxidant that fights inflammation. And that's why your body needs to sleep, because when it sleeps, it has time to flush out those toxins that's been built up throughout the day, especially for your brain. Your brain is always active. It's looking, it's doing, it's thinking. When it's asleep, you have your eyes shut, you're not doing anything, you're not thinking. It gives you a chance for your mind to relax and flush out those toxins. So if you're bragging that, you could work with only 4 hours of sleep or 6 hours sleep, 0.001% of people can benefit from that. But in the long term, you are going to be affected, because there are studies that show that people don't get enough sleep has a strong correlation in getting Alzheimer's down the road. The next big thing is cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone that follows a natural rhythm, peaking in the morning when you wake up and then gradually declining in the night to allow for deep restorative sleep. And when you don't get enough sleep, your body perceives this as a form of stress and keeps cortisol's level high. So this goes back into our ancestors' ways, where we're sleeping, we're sound asleep, we got lucky, we did not get attacked, nothing bad happened. When we wake up, it's the fight or flight mode. You wake up, is there any danger? Do I need to do anything? So your cortisol is very high, and that's when your melatonin is very low. But throughout the day, your cortisol is decreasing and your melatonin is increasing. But now, because in 2025, we have the cell phone, we're getting distracted, we're looking at screens late at night, your body's cortisol levels are staying higher, and it's saying, well, what's going on here? Like, my body's not resting, it's looking at cell phones, it's just still being awake, the dopamine is really high, and the cortisol levels don't have the time to decrease. So that's why you're wired after watching TV or being on your cell phone or TikTok or playing the social media game. So you got to factor that in. And the next big thing about sleep and sun, they actually work well with each other. Morning sunlight helps rest your circadian rhythm. A lot of people talk about the circadian rhythm, but what is it actually? The circadian rhythm is your body's 24-hour natural clock. That ties in back to your melatonin. That ties in back to your dopamine. That ties in back to your cortisol. If you're not having a normal sleep cycle, you're not getting your 7 hours of sleep, your circadian rhythm is going to go off, and that's going to factor your cortisol, your dopamine, that we'll talk about in another video, and your melatonin. So they all go hand in hand. In other words, go outside to get your sun. When you get your sunlight in the morning, it helps jumpstart or helps set the circadian rhythm at the right moment. But in order to complete that cycle, go to sleep at a decent time. We're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Simple as that. I know it's hard to do, but I know you could do it. And that is the summary of this 3.5-hour podcast between Dr. Huberman and Dr. Robert Seheult. So I just want to summarize everything for you real quick. Get 15 minutes of daily sunlight. It charges the mitochondria. It strengthens the immune system. Get 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. That's a non-negotiable for immune function. Eat nutrient-dense foods. Stick with whole foods. Ditch the seed oils. Ditch the processed junks. Ditch the sugar. Try the beef organs if you can. Try the liver. It's one of the most nutrient-dense foods out there. Exercise, but don't overtrain. Most of us don't have to worry about that. Just do moderate at best. If you have to, do 15 minutes of walk, 30 minutes of walk. But get to a point where after you exercise, you're sweating in your shirt, you're breathing a little bit harder. That's moderate exercise. Next one is reduce stress and build community. Get in contact back to your faith. If you're not a person of the cloth, build your social connections. It physically impacts your immune system. Use heat and cold exposure. We talked about in the past. Use saunas, hot baths, wet towels. Throw that in the microwave. Factor in the cold plunges. This builds up your immune system and also makes it more resilient. And then lastly, get the fresh air. Try out forest bathing, especially if you're living in the suburbs or in the city. The natural chemicals from trees boost your immune system. And that, all in a nutshell, is the New Start summary and your first step in getting healthy.